You clicked because you saw it. A gleaming white catamaran, twin hulls slicing calm water, a price tag north of $1.2 million, and the word failed stamped across it. Here is what I found. 7 of these floating palaces, each one costing more than most people's homes, ended up abandoned, sinking, or sold for scrap pennies on the dollar. And the reasons why are not what the brochures ever told you. I did not believe it at first. I thought a boat that expensive could not simply fail. So I started pulling on the thread, reading maritime insurance records, marina liens, and owner forums where people confessed things the dealers never would. What I found kept me up at night. I remember sitting in a harbor cafe in Florida last spring, watching a $500,000 hull get towed in with a tarp over the salon, and asking the dockmaster what happened. He just shook his head and said, "They always think the ocean cares how much they paid." That sentence sent me down this whole rabbit hole. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why these 7 boats collapsed, what warning signs everyone ignored, and the one buried detail that separates a dream from a floating money pit. Stay with me, because the last one on this list is the story nobody in the industry wants repeated. Let me start where my investigation started. The first boat. The first catamaran I traced was a sleek production model, roughly 44 feet, that sold new for about $1.2 million fully loaded. On paper it was perfect. Twin diesel engines, a flybridge, air conditioning in every cabin, a water maker, solar panels, the works. The kind of boat you see in a glossy advertisement with a couple sipping wine at sunset. But here is the clue that stopped me cold. Within 18 months of delivery, that same boat was listed for sale at less than $600,000. Half its value gone in a year and a half. That is not normal depreciation. Something broke. So I dug into the owner's own posts. He was not a sailor. He had made his money in real estate, bought the biggest catamaran the dealer would sell him, and had almost no experience handling twin hulls in weather. The problem with a big luxury cat is that it looks stable, and it is stable, right up until it is not. These boats do not heel over and warn you like a monohull does. They stay flat and calm and give you almost no feedback, and then in the wrong conditions they can be caught by a gust and flipped. He never flipped it, thankfully. What actually killed his ownership was far more ordinary and far more expensive. The systems. All those luxuries I listed, the air conditioning, the water maker, the electronics, the generator. Every single one of them needs constant maintenance in a saltwater environment that eats machinery alive. He told the forum his first year of repairs and dockage came to over $90,000. $90,000 in 1 year, on top of the purchase price. Therefore, the boat did not fail because it was badly built. It failed because nobody told him the truth. The purchase price is the cheapest part of owning one of these, and that pattern, that gap between the dream and the running cost, would repeat itself in every single boat I investigated. Which brings me to the second one, and this one nearly took someone's life. The second catamaran was a performance cruiser, lighter and faster than the first, and priced right around $1.2 million when it launched. The selling point was speed. The builder marketed it as a boat that could cross oceans quickly, outrunning bad weather instead of hiding from it. Here is the surprising turn. That very selling point is what sank the dream. I found the story in a sailing forum thread that had been running for years, and it read like a slow-motion warning. To make a catamaran fast, you make it light. To make it light, you build the hulls thin and you cut weight everywhere you can. But a boat that is light and fast is also a boat that punishes mistakes. The owners were a retired couple who had sailed small boats their whole lives and finally splurged on their forever yacht. They took her out into open water, hit a genuine offshore storm, and discovered the hard way that a light performance cat in big waves does not behave like the small boats they knew. One of the hulls started taking on water through a fitting that had been installed just slightly wrong at the factory. On a heavier, simpler boat, a small leak is a nuisance. On a light performance cat that is already being thrown around, it became an emergency. They radioed for help. The Coast Guard reached them. Everyone survived, but the boat was declared a constructive total loss by the insurance company. A constructive total loss, I learned, is an insurance term. It means the cost to repair the boat is higher than the boat is worth. So a $1.2 million dream became a check for a fraction of that, and a story the couple still cannot tell without their voices shaking. But here is what really got my attention. When I looked into the fitting that failed, I found it was a known issue. Other owners had reported the exact same weakness. Therefore, this was not just bad luck. This was a design and quality problem that the buyers had no way of knowing about, because that information lived in obscure corners of the internet, not in the sales office. The third catamaran was a charter boat. This is important, so let me explain what that means. A lot of these expensive catamarans are not bought by one wealthy family. They are bought through what the industry calls a charter management program. You, the buyer, put down the money for a $1.2 million boat. A charter company then rents it out to vacationers, and you get a cut of the income. The pitch is that the boat pays for itself while you use it a few weeks a year. It sounds brilliant. It sounds like the boat becomes an investment instead of an expense. And that pitch is exactly where people get hurt. Here is what I uncovered when I read through the actual contracts and the complaints filed against these programs. When a boat is chartered out to strangers week after week, it gets used hard. Renters run the engines aggressively. They bump docks. They ignore small problems. By the time the ownership period ends, usually around 5 years, that boat has the wear of a vessel 3 times its age, and the resale value reflects it. The owner I traced had been promised his boat would hold most of its value and generate steady income. Instead, the charter income never covered the maintenance the hard use created. Every season brought a new list of repairs. The engines needed rebuilding early. The interior was beaten. When he finally got the boat back and tried to sell it, he was offered less than half of what he paid, and that was before he settled the outstanding maintenance bills. So who benefited? The charter company collected management fees whether the boat made money or not. The dealer collected the original sale. The finance company collected interest. Everyone in the chain got paid, and the owner absorbed the loss. That was the moment I realized these failures were not random accidents. The system was built so that the person with the least experience carried the most risk. Therefore, I stopped asking why individual boats failed, and I started asking who designed the game this way, and the fourth boat gave me the answer. The fourth catamaran was the most beautiful one in my entire investigation, and it never sailed more than a handful of times. This was a semi-custom build, a boat where the buyer pays extra to add personal touches. The final cost crept well past $1.2 million once every upgrade was added. Marble counters, a wine cooler, a sound system worth more than a car. The owner wanted the finest floating home money could buy, and on the day it was delivered, it truly was. Here is the clue that unraveled everything. That boat spent almost its entire life tied to a dock. I found the marina records, month after month of dockage fees, month after month of the boat sitting still, and a catamaran that sits still is a catamaran that is quietly dying. Salt air corrodes, marine growth covers the hulls, seals dry out and crack, diesel fuel goes bad, batteries die, electronics fail from disuse. A boat is a machine that needs to be run, and this one was a trophy, not a tool. Why did it sit? Because the owner discovered what so many discover too late. Actually using a large luxury catamaran is a full-time skill. You need to know weather, navigation, anchoring, engine maintenance, electrical systems, and how to handle a large twin-hull vessel in tight marinas and open sea. He had the money to buy it. He did not have the 10 years of experience it takes to feel safe using it. So the dream sat at the dock, bleeding thousands of dollars a month in fees and depreciation, until he finally sold it, at a devastating loss to someone who did know how to sail. Now, I know some of you are listening to this and thinking, this has nothing to do with me, I will never spend $1 million on a boat. I want to stop right here and talk to you directly, because this next part is the reason I made this whole video, and I pieced it together specifically for the person who thinks the lesson does not apply to them. Everything I am describing about these boats is really a lesson about how expensive things are sold to us, and it works on a scale anyone can use today, at home, with things you already own. Every one of these failures came down to a single mistake. People looked at the purchase price and never calculated the ownership cost. And you can protect yourself from that exact trap this week, on any big purchase, with nothing but a pen and paper. Here is the method, and it is the same method smart boat buyers use to avoid disaster. Before you buy anything expensive, whether it is a car, an appliance, a house, or yes, a boat, you write down the purchase price at the top of a page. Then underneath, you list every single cost that comes after the purchase. For a car, that is insurance, fuel, tires, oil changes, and the repairs that start around year 6. For an appliance, it is energy use, filters, and the average repair cost. You add up 5 years of those hidden costs, and then you do the thing almost nobody does. You add that 5-year number to the purchase price, and you look at the real total. And that pattern of hidden known problems is where my investigation started to turn dark. But before I show you the third boat, I want to share something that changed how I approach all of this research. Everything I kept uncovering came down to one core idea. The people who got hurt were missing a framework for thinking clearly before they committed. That is exactly what I built into my book, First Principles, Deep Leverage, and the Full System. It walks through the mental models I use to find the buried truth in any high-stakes decision, whether you are buying a vessel, a business, or anything else that carries real risk. The same questions I learned to ask in marina records and naval architecture documents are laid out there in plain language, so you can apply them before you are standing in front of a salesman with a glossy brochure. If that kind of thinking interests you, the link is in the description below. Now, with that in mind, let me take you to the third boat, because this is where I first saw the real villain of this story. I did this with my own truck last year and nearly fell out of my chair. The sticker said one number. The 5-year true cost was almost double. That single sheet of paper has saved me from more bad decisions than any advice I have ever been given, and it cost nothing but 10 minutes and a little honesty. The boat owners who failed skipped this step. The ones who succeeded did it before they ever signed. Now that you have that tool in your hands, let me show you the fifth boat, because this one proves the point in the most painful way possible. The fifth catamaran belonged to a man who did everything right on paper and still lost almost everything. He was experienced. He had sailed for decades. He bought a solid, well-regarded catamaran in the $1.2 million range, and he knew how to handle her. If anyone should have succeeded, it was him. So when I found his boat on a list of failures, I had to know what went wrong. The answer was one word: financing. Here is what happened. He did not pay cash. Almost nobody does at this level. He took a marine loan, and marine loans are not like home mortgages. The interest can be higher, and the boat depreciates while the loan balance barely moves in the early years. This is the trap. For the first several years of a boat loan, you owe far more than the boat is worth. If anything goes wrong in your life, a job loss, a health crisis, a divorce, you cannot simply sell the boat to clear the debt, because it will not sell for enough to cover what you owe. That is exactly what happened to him. A health emergency meant he could no longer sail or keep up the payments. He tried to sell. The best offer was hundreds of thousands of dollars below his loan balance. He was what the industry quietly calls underwater, owing more than the asset is worth. In the end, the boat was surrendered, sold at auction, and he still walked away owing money on a boat he no longer had. That story taught me the cruelest lesson in this entire investigation. It is not the storms that sink these dreams, it is the paperwork. The financing structures are designed to protect the lender, not the buyer, and almost no one reads them closely enough to see the trap before they are standing in it. Therefore, I went looking for the boats that failed not because of the owner and not because of the loan, but because of the builder itself. And the sixth boat showed me something I genuinely did not expect. The sixth catamaran came from a builder that no longer exists. This is a quiet danger in the luxury boat world that hardly anyone talks about. New builders appear all the time promising revolutionary designs and better value. They sell a few dozen boats, and then, when the economy tightens or the orders slow, they close their doors. When that builder disappears, so does every warranty, every spare part, and every bit of factory support. The owner I traced bought his catamaran from exactly such a company. For the first 2 years, life was good. Then a major structural component developed a fault, the kind of fault that is covered under warranty on any normal boat. He went to make the claim, and there was no company left to answer the phone. The builder had folded. Now he owned a $1.2 million boat with a serious problem and no factory to fix it. He learned that certain parts were custom to that builder and simply could not be bought anywhere. A specialized yard quoted him a repair cost so high it approached the value of the boat itself. He was trapped between paying a fortune to fix an orphaned vessel or selling it as a known problem for a crushing loss. He sold it. The buyer got it for a shockingly low price, gambling that he could source or fabricate the parts himself. And the original owner learned the lesson I now want to hand to you. When you buy something expensive, you are not just buying the object, you are buying the promise that the company behind it will still be there when something goes wrong. A cheaper boat from a builder that has survived 40 years is often worth far more than an expensive boat from a builder that might not survive 4. So by this point in my investigation, I understood the money traps, the design flaws, the charter schemes, the financing pits, and the vanishing builders. But there was one boat left, and it was the one the dockmaster's words had been pointing at all along. The one nobody in the industry once repeated. And to understand it, I had to find the single document that ties this entire story together. The seventh catamaran is the one that changed how I see all of these boats, and its story starts with a number that made me stop and read it 3 times. This was a large, luxurious, ocean-capable catamaran, sold for well over $1.2 million to a family who intended to sail around the world. This was their life savings, their retirement, their dream, all poured into one hull. They sold their house, they quit their jobs, they moved aboard, and within the first serious ocean crossing, the boat was gone. Here is what happened, and here is the part that haunts me. The boat did not hit a reef. It was not struck by another vessel. In relatively rough but not extraordinary conditions, it capsized, it flipped over. And the reason it flipped is the single most important thing I learned in this entire investigation. The buried detail that separates a safe catamaran from a dangerous one. I found it in the analysis of catamaran stability that naval architects have quietly understood for decades. A catamaran is incredibly stable at small angles. It resists tipping far better than a single-hull boat. But every catamaran has a point, an angle of heel, beyond which its stability suddenly reverses. Push it past that angle, and instead of wanting to come back upright, the boat now wants to go all the way over. And here is the terrifying part that the brochures never mention. Once a catamaran flips, it does not come back. Unlike a monohull with a heavy keel that self-rights, a capsized catamaran stays upside down. It floats, hull up, and it stays that way. The family survived by climbing onto the upturned hull and waiting for rescue. Their entire life savings floated beneath them, upside down, unreachable. And when I read the naval architecture behind it, I understood that this was knowable. The stability limits of these boats can be calculated. They can be published. But that information is buried in technical papers and stability documents that the average buyer never sees and would not know how to read. So I went looking for the document that lays it all out, and I found it. And this is the piece I want to leave you with, because it is the closest thing to a secret in this entire world. There is a category of marine safety analysis drawing on decades of naval architecture standards that defines something called the vanishing stability angle. It is the exact point at which a boat stops wanting to return upright and starts wanting to capsize. For a monohull with a deep keel, that angle is very high, often past 120 degrees, which is why a sailboat can be knocked nearly flat and still pop back up. For many wide, light luxury catamarans, that critical angle is dramatically lower. And that single number, which is calculable, and which serious naval architects have documented for years, is the difference between a boat that saves your life and a boat that ends it. Here is the secret, the thing that ties my whole investigation together, and that you can act on without ever buying a boat. Before anyone hands over money for a catamaran, they can ask for its stability data. A reputable builder either has it or can point to the standards their design meets. And the moment a salesman gets vague when you ask about the vanishing stability angle, you have learned everything you need to know. The families who failed never knew to ask. The document existed the whole time. Someone had done the math decades ago. The knowledge was sitting there, preserved in technical archives, while people spent their life savings in ignorance of it. That is what the dockmaster meant. The ocean does not care how much you paid. It only cares about physics, and physics was written down long before any of these boats were built. The buyers who thrived were the ones who chased that buried knowledge before they signed. The buyers who failed trusted the brochure. And that is the real story behind all 7 of these boats. Not one of them failed because the ocean was cruel or because luxury is foolish. They failed because the most important information, the running costs, the design flaws, the loan traps, the vanishing builders, and above all the stability numbers, was kept in places the buyer never thought to look. The dream was sold loudly, the truth was filed quietly, and the gap between the two swallowed fortunes. Let me tell you what I walked away believing after months of chasing these stories. The most expensive mistake in the world is assuming that a high price buys you safety, or knowledge, or peace of mind. It buys you none of those. Those things are earned by asking the hard questions before you pay, by reading the boring documents, by doing the 10-minute math on a sheet of paper, and by trusting evidence over a beautiful photograph at sunset. Every single owner who lost everything had the same thing in common. They believed the price tag was doing the thinking for them. You are not that kind of person. You clicked on a video about failure because you would rather understand why things break than be surprised by it. You are the kind of person who wants the real number, the real risk, and the real story, not the glossy version. That instinct is worth more than $1.2 million, and it is the one thing no salesman can ever sell you. So here is what I want to know from you. Of all 7 of these boats, which failure surprised you the most? Was it the one that flipped and never came back? The one financed into a trap? Or the one that just sat at the dock and died? Tell me in the comments, and while you are there, tell me where in the world you are watching from, because I read every single one, and I am always amazed at how far these stories travel. If you believe, like I do, that the truth behind the price tag should be common knowledge instead of buried in technical archives and marina liens, then come along for the next investigation. I am already pulling the thread on something bigger, a story about the so-called luxury upgrades on these boats that owners paid tens of thousands of dollars for, upgrades that actually made the vessels more dangerous, not less. The evidence is stranger than anything you heard today, and I cannot wait to show you what I found. Before you go, one thing. This video was the overview, but inside the Old Ways Almanac, I give you the full breakdown, every hidden cost, the details I couldn't fit here. And if something puzzles you, ask me directly, and I answer you myself, no robot. Folks like you are already inside where you belong. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen. Cancel anytime with one click. Come join me.